Before the internet, before streaming platforms, and before social media ruled our lives, there was a little sitcom that quietly debuted on NBC in 1994 and became one of the biggest TV phenomenons of all time. Friends wasn't just a show, it was a cultural reset. 6 friends, 1 coffee shop, and 10 seasons of unforgettable moments. But behind the laughter, the hugs, and "we were on a break," lies a treasure chest of weird, hilarious, and downright unbelievable facts that most fans never knew. So grab your coffee, find your favorite seat on the orange couch, and get ready. Because here are 15 of the strangest behind-the-scenes facts about Friends 1994 that will completely change how you see the show. Fact 1. The original title was Insomnia Cafe, and it was very, very different. It's almost impossible to imagine the sitcom Friends with any other title, but long before it became the global phenomenon we all know, the show was originally called Insomnia Cafe. Yes, Insomnia Cafe. That was the very first name given to the concept by creators David Crane and Marta Kaufman, and it carried with it a completely different tone and structure than the show that eventually aired. The original script wasn't as bright, bubbly, or humorous as the series that captured millions of hearts worldwide. In fact, it was more grounded in adult realism, centered around deeper themes of relationships, loneliness, and ambition. The characters, too, weren't quite who we know today. Monica was intended to be edgier and more sexually liberated. Joey wasn't the goofy, struggling actor, but rather a cynical, intellectual type. And Ross, believe it or not, didn't even exist in the pilot script. Instead, the early dynamic was meant to focus more on Monica and Joey's flirtation as a central thread. The coffee shop setting was still present, but instead of the bright, cozy charm of Central Perk, it was more of a dim, after-hours coffee house where people wandered in with their existential problems. It was the kind of place you'd expect to find someone scribbling poetry in a notebook at 2 a.m., not clapping to the Rembrandts. As the project moved closer to being picked up by NBC, it went through several rounds of rebranding. First, it was changed to 6 of 1, then Friends Like Us, before finally settling on the punchy, universal title Friends. These name changes weren't just cosmetic. Each one came with a shift in tone, character direction, and audience appeal. NBC executives pushed for a more upbeat, commercial version of the show, one that would attract young adults and could be marketed easily. The network also helped reshape the cast dynamics, adding Ross into the mix and building a group chemistry that mirrored real friendships rather than literary themes. It's one of those odd moments in entertainment history where a series could have turned out completely different if just a few early decisions had been left unchanged. Imagine a world where Ross and Rachel never existed, where the theme song was something melancholic instead of "I'll be there for you," and where Monica and Joey were the original will they won't they couple. It's a strange alternate timeline that gives us a glimpse into how fragile the magic of a show can be, and how close we came to never hearing the words, "How you doin'?" 2. The fountain scene in the opening credits was filmed at 4 a.m. and the cast was miserable. The iconic fountain scene in the opening credits of Friends is one of the most recognizable television visuals of all time. The 6 characters, soaked and joyful, dancing under the spray of a giant glowing fountain while "I'll Be There For You" plays. It looks like pure happiness, spontaneous fun. But the real story behind that scene is far less cheerful. It was shot at 4 o'clock in the morning, in freezing water, and none of the cast members knew what they were in for when they showed up that day. The fountain was located not in New York, but on the Warner Brothers backlot in Burbank, California. The production crew had set up lights to give it that dreamy midnight vibe. The actors were simply told to bring dark-colored clothes they wouldn't mind getting wet. They weren't given a script, a plan, or even context. The director just had one instruction: splash around and pretend you're having fun. But what looked playful on camera was actually cold, miserable work. The water was icy. The shoot dragged on for hours. Lisa Kudrow later admitted she hated being wet and couldn't understand the point of the scene. Jennifer Aniston has also spoken about how the cast felt completely clueless, unsure whether this footage was even going to be used. They were exhausted, and as the takes kept rolling, their clothes got heavier and their patience thinner. Yet, against all odds, the scene became an indelible part of the show's identity. Every time you hear the first claps of that song, you're pulled right back into that image, Monica splashing, Joey smirking, and the whole gang goofing off in perfect harmony. The irony is, that harmony was forged in discomfort. What was born out of a cold, confusing, and soggy night ended up symbolizing the very warmth, joy, and togetherness that made Friends what it was. That's showbiz magic turning water torture into television gold. 3. Monica's apartment number changed halfway through the series without anyone explaining why. One of the stranger continuity quirks in Friends, and there are many, is the mysterious case of Monica's apartment number. Early in Season 1, if you pay close attention, you'll notice that the number on her purple apartment door is a simple, small 5. At first glance, that might seem normal, until you remember Monica's apartment is supposed to be on a high floor of a New York City apartment building. She has a balcony with an expansive city view, and frequent mentions are made of climbing multiple flights of stairs. So how could it be apartment number 5? The inconsistency was spotted early by keen-eyed viewers, and eventually by the show's own producers. Quietly and without any in-universe explanation or episode devoted to it, the number on Monica's door changed from 5 to 20 in the same silent shift. Joey and Chandler's apartment across the hall changed from 4 to 19. There was no dialogue acknowledging it. No, did we switch apartments? Joke, nothing. It just changed. And what's weird is that this wasn't a simple typo on a prop. Apartment numbers are central to storytelling in New York-based sitcoms. They signify class, geography, and narrative space. So for such a glaring error to go unnoticed until after episodes had aired is surprising. According to interviews with set designers, the early 5 and 4 were assigned without much thought. But once fans started writing in and calling it out, the crew had to scramble to fix the illusion. It's a tiny detail, but in a show so beloved and rewatched, it became one of the most noticed inconsistencies. Today, when you rewatch those first few episodes, you can't help but glance at that little 5 and laugh. Because in the strange world of Friends, apartments can defy both math and physics, and no one says a word. 4. A real-life gun scare interrupted filming and shook the cast. For all its cheerful vibes and cozy Central Perk moments, the world of Friends wasn't always a sitcom fantasy. One day during filming on the Warner Brothers lot, reality crashed hard into the studio in the form of a gunshot. In the middle of taping, a loud bang rang out that stopped everyone in their tracks. At first, no one knew what it was. The studio audience froze, the actors dropped their scripts, and the crew went on high alert. Was it a prop misfire? A car backfiring outside? Or something far worse? Security rushed in immediately and evacuated the entire soundstage. The cast was ushered into a secure holding area, and for several tense minutes, no one had any answers. As the panic spread, rumors started swirling that an armed incident might be happening nearby. Eventually, the truth came out. The sound had come from a neighboring studio where a different production was rehearsing a stunt scene involving a prop gun. During that rehearsal, the gun had accidentally discharged, creating a loud, sharp noise that echoed across the lot. No one was hurt, but the emotional impact was real. The Friends cast, used to the bubble of safe studio life, suddenly found themselves confronting how fragile that safety really was. David Schwimmer later admitted in an interview that the scare left him shaken for weeks, and even though production resumed quickly, the atmosphere on set stayed a little more tense after that. It's one of those bizarre footnotes in TV history that few fans know about, a reminder that even behind the laughter, a television set can sometimes feel a little too close to the real world. 5. Matt LeBlanc dislocated his shoulder during a scene, and they had to write it into the show. In Season 3, during the classic bottle episode, the one where no one's ready, the chaos reaches a peak when Joey and Chandler fight over a chair. It's a hilarious sequence. Chandler sneaks into the chair. Joey gets mad, and in retaliation, he puts on all of Chandler's clothes and lunges onto the chair while shouting, "Look at me, I'm Chandler. Could I be wearing any more clothes?" But what fans didn't see was what happened during rehearsal. In an earlier take of the scene, Matt LeBlanc attempted the jump onto the chair with just a bit too much enthusiasm. His foot slipped, his arm caught awkwardly on the frame, and he landed badly, dislocating his shoulder in front of a live studio audience. Production was halted, EMTs were called, LeBlanc was rushed to the hospital, and the filming was rescheduled for a later date. The writers, always quick to adapt, ended up incorporating his real-life injury into a subsequent storyline. They explained the sling he had to wear on the show by writing a scene in which Joey injures himself while jumping on a bed during an audition for Days of Our Lives. It was a clever workaround, but the incident left its mark not just physically, but emotionally. LeBlanc has since described it as a wake-up call about the physicality of comedy. "We were doing so many takes," he said in an interview. "I just went for it, but I pushed too far." His castmates were visibly shaken, and the writers reportedly toned down physical stunts for him in the following season. The injury added a strange layer to Joey's story. The goofball with a sling became even more endearing. And in a show full of accidental moments that became permanent canon, this one might be the most painful. 6. The cast made a secret pact to never hook up with each other, and it worked. In a town like Hollywood, where on-set romances are almost expected, it's strange to think that not a single one of the 6 main friends ever dated each other off-screen. The chemistry was electric, the flirtation palpable, and yet the actors behind, Ross, Rachel, Monica, Chandler, Joey, and Phoebe, drew a very clear boundary, a sort of invisible line that no one dared cross. According to both Jennifer Aniston and Courtney Cox, the cast shared a mutual understanding from the start. They wouldn't get romantically involved with one another. It wasn't an official agreement scribbled down on paper, but more of a professional, emotional instinct to protect something they all felt was fragile and rare. And it wasn't about fear of tabloids, it was about maintaining the tight, real-life friendship they were building behind the scenes. David Schwimmer once revealed that he and Jennifer Aniston actually did have a crush on each other early on, but they channeled all of that into Ross and Rachel, never acting on it in real life. There was a quiet respect among the 6 of them, and that respect extended into their working relationship. Lisa Kudrow later joked that they were all too boring to stir up any dating drama. But really, it was maturity, perhaps rare for young stars in their 20s, that helped preserve the balance that made the show so relatable. And maybe that's why Friends lasted 10 seasons without any major cast feuds or chemistry breakdowns. The friendships were real, and because no one risked ruining them, the show was able to hold on to its heart. 6 friends who felt like our friends too. 7. Marcel the monkey was a diva, and David Schwimmer couldn't stand her. When Ross introduced the world to his pet monkey Marcel in season 1, audiences loved the novelty. A guy struggling with divorce and fatherhood, coping by adopting a monkey, it was classic sitcom absurdity. Marcel brought energy, chaos, and a surprising amount of plot. But behind the scenes, it was a whole different story. Marcel was played by a female capuchin monkey named Katie, and she was anything but easy to work with. Most notably, David Schwimmer, who played Ross, had a notoriously strained relationship with his co-star. He's been open about the fact that he despised working with the monkey. According to Schwimmer, Katie was difficult on set, missing cues, throwing objects, and frequently relieving herself on the actors and set furniture. Her trainers were extremely protective and would swoop in if anyone touched her the wrong way. On a show with such tight filming schedules and precise comedic timing, having a monkey who didn't take direction and frequently caused delays was more than just annoying, it was disruptive. Schwimmer reportedly pushed hard to have Marcel written out of the show, and the producers finally agreed. The monkey was shipped off to Hollywood stardom, a joke in the script, but a relief in reality. Katie did go on to appear in a few films, but to Schwimmer, the day she left Friends was one of the highlights of his tenure. Ironically, Marcel the monkey, who seemed like a whimsical addition, became one of the show's most stress-inducing elements for the humans, anyway. 8. Phoebe was almost a gothic, dark, brooding character before Lisa Kudrow changed everything. It's hard to imagine Phoebe Buffay as anyone but the sunshine-soaked, guitar-playing, crystal-loving oddball we grew to adore. But in the earliest drafts of the script, Phoebe was a much darker figure. The writers initially envisioned her as a moody, sarcastic, almost goth-like presence. She was meant to be the character who rolled her eyes at everyone else's optimism, a contrast to the cheerfulness of characters like Rachel or Chandler. Her backstory was still tragic. She had lived on the streets. Her mother had died, and she'd been through emotional trauma, but originally, she carried that pain outwardly in her fashion, her tone, and her sarcasm. Think more Daria than Daffy Flower Child. Enter Lisa Kudrow. When she auditioned, she brought in something the writers didn't anticipate. Vulnerability, weirdness, and warmth, all wrapped into one bizarre, enchanting energy. She delivered lines in a spacey tone, said things that felt out of left field, and added a goofy charm to the character that still honored her complex past. The writers fell in love with this new version and rewrote Phoebe to match Kudrow's performance. They didn't remove the darkness. Instead, they layered it beneath a quirky surface, which gave the character depth. Phoebe wasn't just the weird one. She was someone who had suffered and survived, but chose to live through joy, music, and cats named Smelly. That transformation gave us one of the most original female characters on television, a true mix of light and shadow molded entirely by the actor who played her. 9. Gunther was hired just because he knew how to work a coffee machine and became iconic. Gunther, the bleach blonde barista of Central Perk with the silent, simmering crush on Rachel, became a recurring character fans adored. But here's what most people don't know. He was never supposed to be anything more than a background extra. James Michael Tyler, the actor behind Gunther, was working as a barista in real life and happened to be the only extra on set who actually knew how to operate an espresso machine. That simple skill pulling coffee shots without breaking anything made him stand out. The production team kept bringing him back, episode after episode, just to work the machine in the background. But Tyler had something else, a deadpan presence that added layers to every scene he appeared in. Slowly, he started getting lines small at first, then larger. The writers leaned into his awkward energy and gave him a one-sided, desperate love for Rachel that became an ongoing subplot across 150 episodes. Despite being technically a background character, Gunther's arc had emotional weight. In the final season, he finally confesses his love to Rachel, only to be gently let down. The moment felt real, sweet, and sad, like the punchline to a decade-long inside joke. James Michael Tyler passed away in 2021, and the outpouring of love from fans proved how deeply his role, born from coffee machine experience, had touched the world. Gunther wasn't just an extra, he was the quiet, loyal heart of Central Perk. 10. Jennifer Aniston was almost replaced because she was stuck in another sitcom. Jennifer Aniston is so synonymous with the character of Rachel Green that it's shocking to learn she almost didn't get the part. At the time she auditioned for Friends, she was already cast in another CBS sitcom called Muddling Through. The network wanted her, the producers adored her, and she fit the part perfectly, but contracts in Hollywood are messy. If Muddling Through succeeded, Aniston would be unavailable, and the role of Rachel would go to someone else. NBC was so confident in Friends' potential that they devised a risky plan. They cast Aniston anyway and secretly hoped her other show would fail. And they weren't subtle about it either. NBC reportedly scheduled reruns of blockbuster TV shows against Muddling Through to deliberately tank its ratings. It worked. Muddling Through was canceled after just a few episodes, freeing Aniston to continue on Friends full-time. Had the show lasted even a few weeks longer, Rachel would have been played by a different actress entirely, possibly Téa Leoni, who was another top contender. It's one of those what-if scenarios that feels almost too surreal to consider. Without Aniston's timing, haircut, and comedic instincts, would the Ross and Rachel storyline have had the same emotional weight? Probably not. Sometimes, success hinges on the tiniest windows of luck, and for Aniston and Friends, the stars aligned just in time. So there you have it, 15 of the weirdest, wildest, and most unbelievable facts about Friends that pull back the curtain on the show's carefully crafted world. From monkeys that terrorized cast members, to coffee baristas turned icons, to accidental props that became worldwide symbols, these behind-the-scenes moments reveal how much chaos, coincidence, and luck go into making TV history. Because behind every perfect laugh track and heartwarming hug, there's a whole lot of weird. And maybe that's exactly why Friends still feels so real, because it was never perfect. It was just a little weird, like all of us.